All right, 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM listeners, you already know what time it is, and tonight we have the legendary, formerly of Death Row Records, this man coming straight out of the 313 of Detroit, Michigan. We got Lord G right here live on the line. How are you doing this evening?
Oh man, kaboom, you know what it is. Legendary in the building. What's going on?
I gotta say, first and foremost, man, I have been a fan of yours for many, many years, man. So just thank you so much for just giving us a little bit of your time this evening, man. I've been definitely looking forward to this evening.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure, brother.
But I know you're a busy guy, man, so I'm going to dive right into this interview, man. And I want to take you back to your teenage years, man. I read that at the age of 14, you actually began DJing. And the one thing I've always wanted to know, man, what actually made you transition from being a DJ into actually being an MC?
Well, you know, spinning records it's a party type of vibration when you spin records for a group of people and you make them dance and make them have fun. And so, you know, back in the day, we used to find the break beats and records where the singers, you couldn't hear the vocals or whatnot, and you would take that little section, that little segment of that record, and you would just spin that back and forth, and then cats would start busting their rhymes over it. So what ended up happening was, as I would be spinning these break beats and whatnot, you know, cats would be busting their rhymes or whatever, and they wasn't up to par with their bars. So when I started hearing these subpar bars, that's what made me start saying, you know what, I'm going to have to put these bars together myself and show these cats how it's supposed to be done. You know what I mean?
And I gotta say as well, man, you were actually you were a phenomenal DJ. Do you still actually, you know, scratch records every now and then, or do you just strictly keep it to your MC and production?
Well, you know what? It's funny you say that. It's funny you ask that because my boy had a club called Legacy, and it was a nice club, man. It was like a bar and grill, kind of intimate setting. Capacity was probably like 150 people, so it wasn't really big, but it was nice. And I was DJing for him for about 3 months up in the club. So that's my last DJ gig that I did. And that was about 9 months ago.
And also as well, man, in the late '80s, you were actually you were first heard under the name Eagle GT, man, as a member of Detroit's original posse. I was wondering if you can tell our listeners a story about that amazing group, and of course, how did you actually meet the other members?
Well, you know, with DOP, that acronymically, that's DOP, which is Detroit's original posse, and it had the what you would call maybe like the hyphen over the O. So it really spelled DOP was dope without the E. And the way that came about, it was an MC of mine a student that I had. His name was Darren D. And he was one of my best students that I ever had. The things that I would teach him, he would gravitate to them so quickly, and he would excel at a higher speed and a higher rate than anybody I ever worked with. So once he started to develop his talent, me and him came together as two MCs, and what we did, we got with a DJ named The Funky Messiah, which was my boy Tink, and we also got with another brother named Mr. Mill, rest in peace. He transitioned, and we came together and made some really, really good material, and Detroit's original posse was born. We also had another DJ named Damon D, so we was one of the first groups that had two DJs simultaneously, and it was a beautiful thing, man. I mean, we had the opportunity to open up for Rakim in 1990 at a club called the Grand Quarters in Detroit, Michigan, on Woodward and Grand Boulevard. And that was one of the biggest shows that we ever had, biggest opportunities to open up for Rakim, the God MC, in Detroit, Michigan, over 30 years ago.
And I gotta say, that sounds like a phenomenal concert as well, man. Because especially being in Detroit, you know, because I've heard stories, man, that if you don't come with it in Detroit, they're definitely gonna boo you off the stage.
Oh, there's no question about it. Detroit is one of the. It's probably maybe secondary to the Apollo. You know, the Apollo is a real tough crowd in New York. If you don't, they don't give you long to establish yourself. If you come out there and you halfway with it, they're gonna boo you right off the stage. They're not gonna show no mercy. It's a merciless crowd. That's kind of how Detroit natives are too. They're merciless.
And also as well, man, DOP, man, was actually signed to the record label Scorcher Records. I was wondering, how did that record deal actually come to be for you guys? And of course, what was it like being one of the earliest rap groups to actually emerge from Detroit, Michigan?
Well, you know, that whole scenario was a blessing that came through my boy Mr. Mill, rest in peace, the one I mentioned just a little while ago. It was his father that owned that record company. So what ended up happening ultimately, you know, as we would make material, Mr. Mill would be playing it around his father, and his father heard it, and he said, you know, he started getting inquisitive, and he was inquiring, yo, who is that? What y'all working on? You know, that sounds pretty good, blah, blah, blah. And so once he heard a couple of songs, and I can't remember which one really, really struck him. One of them really got him real good where it caught his ear. Because at first he just thinking, okay, this is my son. He messing around with his partners. You know, he wasn't really taking us serious. But once we started making real records, you know, not demonstrations, what they call demos, but when you're actually making a real record, a complete production, a complete body of work. And he heard, I almost had the song that it was. You got to forgive me, brother, because we talking about 30 years ago, but it was a song, I think it was called Party, that we made. And that song, it just lit a fire under him. And when he heard that, he got more interested, he got more serious, and then he signed us. That's my first record deal. That record deal was in 1989. I was 19 years old. That particular body of work came out on a cassette. You know, they don't even make cassettes no more, but back then, that was the most common format for your music to be on. And we had our first album, 1989, Detroit's Original Posse, in stores, and I was 19 years old, brother.
It must have been a dope feeling, man, just being able to walk into the record store, man, and actually see your cassettes up on the wall to be purchased.
Oh, man, let me tell you something. When I walked into that record store, and you look into that casing, because, you know, back then, you had to look into the glass case. The glass case had all the records in it, and then you look in that case, and you see your record in there, and the real trick that I used to love to do is a lot of people didn't know what I looked like visually. They just knew what I sounded like audio-wise. So I could walk into the record store, and I could say, yo, do you have that Detroit's Original Posse? And they'd say, yeah, man, I mean, that's a hot record. We've been selling that all day. And I buy my own record, and they don't even know it's me.
Did you ever actually, like, buy your own record and actually start rapping your own stuff, like, as you're walking out of the store, just walking slow, kind of like creeping to the door, rapping your own stuff to see if anybody ever caught on?
Nah, you know what? One time, when I put out my first solo record, not my first solo record, because I put out a single in 1992 called For Real with a B-side called Bringing It. And we used that record to open up for the famous Thomas Hitman Hearns, the legendary Detroit, Michigan boxer, the Hitman, to the Motor City Cobra, you know. So we had that record in 92, but my first solo album, I put it out in 1999, and that one was called Hot to Death on the mic chord, and partially produced by the legendary, world-famous Chris the Glove Taylor, which is Dr. Dre's top student, top protege, and it's also Ice-T's former DJ. It's a record called Reckless, where Ice-T says it's a DJ named Glove that reigns supreme. the turntable wizard on the hip-hop scene. He's reckless. And Glove is my teacher. So I'm very fortunate to be guided and embraced by not only the world-famous Dr. Dre, but his top student and protege, which is Chris the Glove Taylor, and also from a lyric perspective to be embraced by Rakim the God MC. So I was fortunate, man. I had like the best of both worlds. I had arguably the most dangerous MC teaching me and arguably the most dangerous producer teaching me. So I was able to basically pull from both directions and my cup overflowing, brother.
And also as well, man, yourself and I read as well that yourself and 6 other Detroit MCs actually came together to create the iconic party song titled "Feel Alright," man. I was wondering if you can tell our listeners a bit more about this amazing joint, and of course, what actually made yourself and the 6 other Detroit MCs come together and join forces for this amazing song.
You know what? You just made me remember something, brother. That's the record that Mr. Mills' father, that's the record that shook him. It wasn't Party. I was thinking it was Party, but it was Feeling All Right. That's the record. And that record, man, was magical because what ended up happening, and a lot of MCs and DJs, you know, entertainers probably in general could probably attest to this, but my DJ, the Funky Messiah, he hooked up with my other DJ, Damon D, and they were coming up with different grooves. And back then, it was a particular device called the SP. And my DJ, the Funky Messiah, he mastered the SP. SP 1200, if I'm not mistaken, is what that was. Then we started working with the MPC, you know, some of these older triplets they were dominant back then. I mean, they were in every studio. And they had that groove going, man. And that groove was magical. And what we did was we assembled in the studio. We had the groove playing. And, of course, you know, we had a little sippy sip and a little cannabis leaf. And once you meditate and elevate, man, the vibrations just started connecting. You know what I'm saying? And it just started, the energy started to build up, and it just manifested into something real powerful. It was just a powerful vibe in the studio. And when we started making Feeling All Right, everybody just got so excited, man, like little children going to an amusement park or something. There was some magic in there as we began to create that song. And once we all combined, and we said, we're going to share this record, man, and we're going to bounce the lyrics back and forth, and we're going to just have fun with this, because everybody was feeling all right. And so that's how the record was born. It was just born from fun, natural vibration, and just a natural connection of 6 MCs that wanted to make a fun record, a good record, something that made people dance, you know, kind of change the vibration. A lot of times hip-hop can have a dark type of vibration, a dark energy that's not conducive to partying and having fun. It's a more serious, staring you down and all this nonsense. We wanted to take it another direction and make it where whether you was a blood, whether you was a crip, whether you was an SA, whether you was straight, whether you was gay, none of that shit mattered, man. It's all about having fun. You know what I'm saying?
And also as well, man, jumping ahead into the 90s, as you mentioned earlier on about working with Dr. Dre, that's actually one of my next questions, man, that you were also discovered by Dr. Dre through Death Row music director Tony Green. I was wondering, how did yourself and Tony initially get connected? And of course, man, what was it like just being at Death Row working alongside Dr. Dre, man? Because for any individual, man, even in the 90s, like that must have been a dream come true for any hip-hop artist to be sitting side by side in the studio with West Coast hip-hop legend, even at that time, Dr. Dre.
Well, you know, for the first part of the question, me and Tony, we both from Detroit. And so what ended up happening, it was another DJ named Mojo that we hooked up at his house. And I've always been like a visionary, and I've always had like I could kind of see ahead of the game a little bit. So when Tony had me, we was in the basement of the studio grooving, and there was a couple of musicians down there, and what I did was I ended up making like a basic drum template, just like some boom bap type shit. And then I went over to the bass player and I started humming a bass line in his ear. And then he listening to me, he could feel it, and he started playing it. So now we got the drums and the bass lines, which is the fundamental foundation of busting raps. You can just bust over drums and a bass line, just drums, period. But once the bass line come in there, it just gives the groove another groove. Then I went over to the guitar player. I started humming some shit in his ear. He started vibing. He started playing it. Next thing you know, we got a groove going. So when Tony Green saw me do that, he said, shit, this boy got some ability. He got some potential. So that's how I attracted his attention. He was already a fan and already paid attention to me, but he had never saw me do that. Like I kind of orchestrated something. I was kind of being an orchestrator. So when he came out here to California, he hooked up with Death Row, and he became their bass player. So he played a lot of bass lines that you hear on a lot of that music. That's Tony Green playing that bass line. And of course, Tony Green played for the legendary Dramatics. But now, what ended up happening, ultimately, long story short, when he got with Death Row and them, he used to always brag to them and say, I got the baddest rapper in the world. So over and over, he would say this type of shit periodically, sporadically, here and there. So one day, Snoop and them, like, they basically said, we're going to call his bluff. So they say, you keep talking about this badass rapper you got, where is he at? That's what they basically said. It basically boiled down to some shit just like that. They said, where is he at? You keep talking shit about him, where is he? And he said, okay, when I come down here tomorrow, I'm going to bring him. So he brought me down there. Nobody was paying me any attention because nobody really heard my music. They didn't really know who I was. They was walking back and forth past me, and everybody was kind of doing their own thing. And so Suge gave me the clear to make a couple of records and see what I could do. And so once Suge gave me that studio time, I went in there, man, let me tell you something, man. Shit. I must have made an album in a week, man. I was like on my Tupac shit. Rest in peace to that brother. And so I worked so hard and made so many records, man. And it was this one record in particular. It was called How Many Hoes? And that's back before I got extremely conscious like I am now. I was a little more raw, a little more edgy. And so that record attracted Snoop's attention. Now, at that time, Snoop didn't have an album yet. Snoop was riding the wave of a record called 187, which was on the Deep Cover soundtrack with Larry Fishburne and Jeff Goldblum, 187 on the Undercover Cop. So that was the record that they had going. It was hot. They was on tour. And while they was on that tour, they was playing my record, How Many Hoes? Snoop really loved the record. Even on one of his records, he says, how many hoes and something in your group? Want to take a ride in my 7-deuce coupe or something like that. So that record it had a lot of, it influenced him, and he loved it. So when they came off tour, they had played that record hundreds of times on the tour bus. So when he came in the studio, I'll never forget this. This is like 30 years ago. He said, where's the guy that made that record at? Where is he at? And then Tony Green said, there you go right there. And Snoop came over to me and he said, cuz. He said, nephew. And he hugged me and he said, I love that record, man. We gonna get paid, we gonna make money. You so dope, brother. And he, at that day, after he hugged me and embraced me like that, I think that really changed the way everybody else over there looked at me as well, because Snoop is so charismatic. charismatic and magnetic, and so many people follow his lead. So once he embraced me, it was over with. Everybody embraced me. Nate Dogg, rest in peace to that brother. Corrupt, Daz, all of them. I mean, Daz is instrumental in getting me on the Above the Rim soundtrack. I'll never forget the day that I went to the studio and he told Suge right in front of me, Suge, you got to put this record on the soundtrack. This man is hot. And Suge listened to my song, got to get my motherfucking money right. He listened to it right there. He looked back at me. I felt real awkward because I was a manager at a restaurant at the time, and I was wearing a tie and a white shirt, so I didn't look like no MC and no shit like that. I looked more like a square, like a nerd almost. I felt kind of awkward dressed like that at that time. But when Suge listened to the record, man, he looked at me, he looked back, he said, put it on the soundtrack. And that's how I got on the Above the Rim soundtrack. Just like that, spur of the moment, Daz telling Suge, listen to this record again, and boom, triple platinum access, baby.
And I gotta say, first and foremost, man, you know, that's where I first discovered you, man, was actually the Above the Rim soundtrack back in the day, man. And I just fell in love, man, with you, with your bars, your delivery. I mean, you are definitely one of the baddest MCs to ever do it, man. Like, one of the best of all time. And I say this in the most respectable way, man. I personally feel that Death Row Records, man, dropped the ball on you, man, because you could have been the top individual, man, right up there with Pac in that studio, in my personal opinion, man. I feel they should have utilized you in so many more ways than what they did.
Well, you know, a lot of people, you know, tell me similar scenarios, and we think about this shit all the time, because, you know, when we did the BET documentary, the Death Row Chronicles, which is basically a 6-part documentary about the rise and fall of Death Row. I'm on parts 1 and 2. People always wonder and think about what would have happened if everything would have manifested, because I was going to be Death Row's first positive artist, first conscious artist, and first MC from Detroit. At the time when I was over there, they only had basically what you would call gangbangers over there, Crips and Bloods, but they were trying to do something good. They were trying to bring Crips and Bloods together to do something positive. So the whole motivation was dope, you know, but unfortunately, it was a lot of negative dynamics internally that I wasn't aware of. A lot of people wasn't getting paid, and they wasn't getting this and that, and people getting beat up, and all the negative stories that you hear about Death Row, all those stories, I'm one of the only people that I don't have one of those stories, bro. I don't have a negative scenario with Death Row. Nothing never happened to me at Death Row. Death Row treated me so good and embraced me like it's my extended family, brother. And so when they interviewed me at BET, one of the directors said, "You're the only person out of all the interviews we did that you don't have a negative thing to say about Death Row or any of your experiences, because everything that I ever experienced over there was it was such a blessing, man." And let me tell you, when I look back on this shit now, and I say, man, you was sitting in Dr. Dre's house. And I'll never forget one time when I was over there with him, and back then, the most famous mixing boards were the Neve board and the SSL. So Dre had those boards in his house, man. And those boards are so big that they have to be assembled in wherever you want it to be, because it's too long to fit through a door threshold. So one day Dre was in there working on a project. I'll never forget this, man. And I just asked him, "Can I sit next to you and watch you work?" And he said, "Yeah." And so I sit next to him, and I'm just sitting there. And then he just started teaching me, man. I never asked him one question. He just looked at me, And then he looked back at the board, and he was looking at the board. He was moving some of the knobs, and he said, "See this right here?" I said, "You what?" He said, "This is the compressor." He said, "See this right here?" He just started telling me, man, and I just started listening. He said, "Don't let this big board intimidate you." He said, "All you got to do is look at one line, one row of the buttons, and once you learn that one row, the whole board is the same thing over and over again." And I said, "Wow." And that was the beginning of me learning from the master, bro.
I just have to ask, man, because obviously, you know, that wasn't the only time and only session you had with the legendary Dr. Dre. So I don't want you, obviously I don't want you to give away any secrets or whatnot that he taught you, but what is one of the most memorable things that you actually learned from Dr. Dre? What I'm trying to ask is, sorry, like, what is one of, like, the most, like, amazing things that he taught you that you still use today in your production work?
Well, you know, the one thing I learned from Dre, I learned a few things from Dre. One thing Dre told me years ago, I was 23, I think, when he told me. He told me, no matter how hard you work for your money, there's going to be at least 7 people working just as hard or harder to steal it from you. I'll never forget when he told me that. And that resonated with me. But the one thing that stuck with me the most out of being around Dr. Dre was he taught me that your music clarity is so important, bro. See, that's one thing about Dre. Whether you like the production, whether you like the song, it doesn't matter. The song is going to be clear as a glass of water, bro. Dre knows how to make songs sound the best that they can sound. And what he taught me, and I learned from Michael Jackson as well, rest in peace to that brother, was the key to a song, a lot of times, and most of the times maybe, you know, my uncle even would say this, rest in peace, the great Norman Whitfield, which is my god uncle, which is the greatest songwriter in the world, you know, of course famous for so many records, but I heard it through the grapevine. It's probably his most famous body of work. They told me and showed me that the mix of a song can make or break that record. That's how important the mix is. And that's what I learned from Dre. The importance of mixing and maximum clarity. And like Michael Jackson said, to get tracks to be at their peak without peaking. Because, you know, these boards have meters on them, and the red marks means that you were going too high. So you want to have your meter going all the way to the top of the green, right before it peaks on the red, and you're talking about maximum optimization. And so Dre is a master of that. He has a master ear. The man is a genius. When he hears something that's dope, he knows it immediately. It's like, so when you're around him, you want to just be watching him and absorbing him. And what when you listen to my music to this day, my clarity in my music, and I sent you 3 of my new bodies of work just a little while ago. One thing you're going to notice when you listen to them is the maximum optimization in the clarity. And that's what I learned from Dre. Dre said you should be able to zoom in on any instrumentation in any song. If you want to listen to the tambourine, you should be able to focus and zoom into the record, and you can hear the tambourine. You want to listen to the bass line, you can go in and hear that. You want to hear the hi-hat cymbal, you should be able to close your eyes, zoom into the track, and hear every individual element with maximum clarity, without distortion, and equally balanced. And that I think a lot of that came from my DJ experience, because you had to learn how to blend records, and blending is a form of balance, and that's what mixing is all about. Balancing the record, balancing the dynamics and the elements. You feel me?
And also, aside from your production, man, as well, you were actually the voice actor for the cartoon character Robotron. I was wondering, man, what actually made you decide to get into voice acting? And of course, for the individuals that haven't already checked out this amazing cartoon, where can they actually watch it?
Well, you know, it was that content, if I'm not mistaken, that was owned by NBC, Universal company owned that. And they had a program called Hip Hop 101. And now that all that content got put into a vault. And I think, if I remember correctly, a company named TV One bought that content. And, you know, what we're hoping will happen, which happens a lot of times, with content can be purchased and then it can be slept on, but then you can get new management or whatnot and new personnel. They go through the vault, they see some shit they like, they bring it back to life. So hopefully that can happen, but what ended up happening, long story short, one of my partners named Frank Meyer, he got me hooked up with that. He stays connected in the game. He's a really magnetic brother, good person, just fun to be around. And he listened to my voice, and he told me, man, you got the voice, man, where you could be radio personality. Like, you could do something with your voice, man. Your voice, you can make some money. And so he always believed in my voice. And so once he had the opportunity to get to do the casting for those voices for all the different characters, he offered me the opportunity to be Robotron. And the cool part about that is I was a big Robotron fan. And so it was an honor and a pleasure to be able to do that and be the voice of Robotron. It was so fun, so much fun. And once I did that, I mean, that opened up some other doors. I started doing other voiceover work. I started doing vocal coaching. I got another gig being some more character voices for this animated cartoon called the All Ball Band, which is produced by Jim White. And it just opened up so many doors where people just started being attracted and coming towards me like, man, your voice, blah, 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 your voice. And so that kind of steered me, gave me more confidence as an MC too, because they told me, you know, you got that rock him tone, that Busta Rhymes type of a tone, where it's a dominant vibration. It's got strength in it. It's got power in it. It's like, it's attractive. And so I just started, you know, feeding off of what they were giving me, trying to absorb from each individual I was around, like Pac and Nate Dogg and these great brothers. And then I just basically took a little bit from all of them and kind of mixed it together and made my own gumbo.
And I gotta say, man, that gumbo most definitely was amazing, man. I gotta say, you know what I mean? I really hope that they actually do something with that footage, man, because I really think, you know, just being able to have that on even if it just comes out on DVD, just being able to have that as a hip hop fan would just be absolutely tremendous.
Oh, absolutely. All of that stuff is basically what you would call artifacts of hip hop. You know, you're talking about, you know, some original, creative concepts and energies and vibrations that people will be able to access forever. And, you know, this is what we're trying to do now, is we're trying to, since the internet has changed the whole way that you can access music and material, all this content can be accessed from around the world instantaneous and simultaneous and things of that nature. You know, what we're doing now is we're going to be making all this content available on the internet. We're going to make it where people can access all this material. Because when I was over with Death Row, you know, they put out Gotta Get My Motherfucking Money Right, which is just one of the songs I made over there. I made an entire album over there. So me and Dr. Dre made a record together, and we made that record, man, at like 4 o'clock in the morning. We were in the studio recording. And a lot of people have been questioning and wondering about those other songs that I made over there that never came out. TV One, I take that back. That company is called E1. Entertainment One is what the name of the company is that bought the material out of the vault. It's E1. And so people now are curious about that material. And what other songs did Lord G make when he was over there? And what other productions did he do? Because, you know, I was vocal coaching Bow Wow, Lil Bow Wow, when he was 7 years old. I used to be his vocal coach. I was working with a group that Dr. Dre had called Warning, which was 3 girls from Detroit. Nancy Fletcher being the lead. That's my folks. She from Detroit. She's the girl that's singing on the one that's that sings that the You Can Ring My Bell flip that Dr. Dre did. That's Nancy Fletcher singing on that. And those type of projects people are wondering about. Like the record I made with Corrupt called Ease Up. I made a record with Corrupt called Ease Up. Corrupt was only 18 years old when I put him on that record. And that record was hot. And so what I ended up doing, I made a second version, and I put a brother named King Lou in Corrupt's place. So I got 2 different versions. I got a version with me, Corrupt, and Do-Rilla from Second Ave. Then I got a version with me, King Lou, and Do-Rilla from Second Ave of the same song featuring my boy Shael. Rest in peace to that brother. He was the Belizean brother doing the patois on the record. I got 2 versions of that same record, but long story short, people are interested in those other records that I did with Death Row that nobody never heard. So what we're going to do, we're going to make that stuff accessible. And we're going to call it the Lost Archives. That's what I think I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it something like that. The Lost Files or the X-Files. Flip it to the G-Files. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to do something creative, but we're going to make it where the listeners get to hear that material, man.
And I gotta say, I was actually wondering that as well, you know, because I do know that sometimes, you know, a lot of record labels, they tend to, you know, scrap a lot of songs. Even if they're phenomenal, they find something even better because you only fit so many songs on a record. So I always thought they were in the vault, you know, and unfortunately we're never going to be able to hear them. So it's really good, and it's definitely like a breath of fresh air just to be able to hear that us fans, we get the opportunity to listen to these lost archives.
Oh, absolutely, man. So many people are so excited about it. I mean, you know, it's a part of history that's factual and actual. So it's just a blessing to be able to go back and present that to people so they can hear what we did, hear what we were working on, hear what me and Dre did. You know, I remember one time Dre asked me would I write a rhyme for him. And I said, I would love to write a rhyme for you. And I asked him, I want you to direct my video. And then he said, man, I would love to direct your video. And so I started explaining some of my concepts in my mind to him. And I'll never forget, man, his eyebrows went up. And he looked at me, he said, man, that shit that you talking about making happen on film would be so dope. We got to get the right budget for that. Because I got a real creative mind, and so I'm thinking all these special effects and shit. And I had dreadlocks back then. So one of the concepts that I had was some reverse direction type shit where you got the camera upside down, and then I'm upside down. So everything looks like it's right side up. But since it's upside down, my dreadlocks are dangling up in the air because I'm hanging upside down. But when you flip that film around, and I'm right side up with my dreadlocks levitating like that, it's going to just look crazy visually on the camera for the viewer. And man, Dre said, and then I had another, and then you take some other shit and you drop it down in the camera while it's upside down. When we turn it back right side up, it's going to look like shit is going up from the ground, going up towards the sky. Man, Dre looked at me. He said, man, if we bring that shit to life right there, I mean, me and his mind together was so, it was such a powerful combination. And just, because he's so creative and my creativity put in conjunction with his, just, everybody just was looking forward to it, man. It was like the biggest shit going where people was wondering, what is Dr. Dre and Lord G about to put out? Because at the time, man, you know, Eminem wasn't even out yet. We took Eminem's, me and my manager gave Dr. Dre Eminem's demo. That's how Eminem got on. We gave him the tape. Dre wasn't even paying attention to it at first. And then one day, with his powerful mind, he's a visionary. He thought about it, and he said, you know what? With the racial discrimination that's in the world and in the hip-hop culture, this white boy can blow up. And you know, when you listen to Eminem, Eminem is a dangerous MC, man. He ain't nothing to be playing around with. You know, and Dre saw the potential, and look what happened. You got one of the illest white boys to ever touch the mic. I mean, arguably one of the most dangerous MCs. And, you know, I'm just glad that I could play a part in getting his material to Dr. Dre. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people don't know that part of the history. But, yeah, Eminem, his demo was given to Dr. Dre by me and my manager Vince Berry.
And I gotta ask, man, how did you actually initially meet Eminem? Because obviously, you know, he probably was on the streets, you know, selling tapes and whatnot. But how did you actually initially get connected with Eminem for M to actually give you that amazing demo?
Well, you know, it was through these two brothers that my manager knew, called the Bass Brothers, Mark and Jeff Bass. They had Eminem, and they had a demo. And at that particular time, I was the hottest thing going. You know, there was all this talk on the street about this new artist that Death Row is about to put out named Lord G, and he's like Brother J from the X-Clan, and he's like Busta Rhymes, and he's like Rakim, and he's like all these other dope MCs mixed together. And so everybody was like, man, who is this Lord G? Who is he? Where is he? What does he look like? What does he sound like? Where's his music? You know, they was just trying to find me. Because when we put out Gotta Get My Motherfucking Money Right, I didn't have a video. So a lot of people didn't know what I looked like. They knew that record, but they didn't know what I looked like. So when I go places, even to this day, and I'll talk about that on the stage, I say, yeah, y'all might know me from the Militia. Because, you know, I'm in the group The Militia, too. And we had the record Burn to the Sunburns Your Eyes, which is a gold record about the cannabis plant. And so when I get on stage a lot of times to do my new material, I tell people, you know, I'm a student of Rakim and Dr. Dre, and I was on Above the Rim soundtrack, Gotta Get My Motherfucking Money Right. I was working with Walt Disney, the Mickey Mouse Club, writing for Christina Aguilera and Justin Timberlake when they was only 12 and 13 years old, bro. And I started talking about my previous accomplishments. I have people come up to me and say, Gotta Get My Money Right. That's you that made that song? And I say, yeah. And they say, man, I used to play that song on the way to work every day 20 times in a row and blah, blah, blah. And people come up to me and shake my hand and tell me how much they love that record and how much that record helps them to focus on their money and getting their money right and blah, blah, blah. And so it's still a historical landmark, you know. But Jeff and Mark Bass, those brothers are the brothers that gave us the demo. And they told us, they asked me, can you take Eminem under your wing and kind of like guide him and help him and, you know, let him open up for you in your shows? And I said, absolutely. You know, and I had this big show in Anaheim. I was opening up for Slick Rick and De La Soul. And then we also had on that card Souls of Mischief. We had, I think Corrupt and Daz was on the card. We had The Far Side was on the card. Some legendary groups, man. Hip-hop legendary groups. And Eminem, I was going to let him open up for me on that show. But some kind of way, long story short, it didn't happen. And I think that added some salt to me and his relationship. Because I think him and his management at the time, they kind of took it personal that he didn't get to open up for me in that Anaheim show with Slick Rick and De La Soul. And I think that kind of created a veering in the road for me and him. And we kind of went two different directions. But M know me just like I know him. If you talk to Eminem and you ask him, you know Lord G? He gonna tell you, hell yeah, I know Lord G. Just like I know him. And I give him enough respect and big props because him is a dangerous MC, bro. He ain't nothing to play with.
But also, I gotta ask, Lord, because I know we only touch base on like just a sliver of your legendary career this evening, man. I know, there's stories and records and just production work for days, man. But I have to ask you, is there anything I actually missed during this interview? Anything else you still want to talk about or promote while we still have you here live on the Canadian airwaves?
Well, in a nutshell, my career, the landmark pieces of it, I worked with Walt Disney, the Mickey Mouse Club, and at that time, Christina Aguilera, Justin Timberlake, and Britney Spears, they were in the Mickey Mouse Club. It's called MMC. I did 3 songs on that album. And after that, when I hooked up with the Militia, we did the song Burn, or Till the Sun Burns Your Eyes. Then go from there, transition to my solo records with Hot to Death. And then I just hooked up with a legendary, world famous, maybe the most famous guitar player in the world. His name is Wah Watson. Me and him, he grew fond of me, and he took me under his wing, man, and we made a group together. We called the group It's Time. And so we started working on a project. We had 10 songs. We finished 3 of them, and then he passed away. So rest in peace to that brother. But Wah Watson, you can Google him. He's played on everybody's record pretty much in the industry. He played for Michael Jackson, Barry White, Rose Royce. He played for Vanessa Williams, Gloria Gaynor. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Bobby Womack, Marvin Gaye. He's such a talented brother. And so the 3 records that we made, that we were able to finish before he passed, those are like, I'm so happy about those records. And we're going to be releasing those records. As a matter of fact, I sent you one of those records. It's called I Will. And I want you to play that record so that the fans can hear and get a sneak preview into my new album that's featuring the great Wah Watson. Now, Wah Watson was my god-uncle's guitar player, the great Norman Whitfield. This is how I know Wah. I met him through my uncle. And so, for him to transition from being my uncle's guitar player to being my guitar player is an honor and a blessing. And the 3 songs that we have together is such a blessing. And before he passed away, man, he came to me. He makes the most famous chicken wings. They're called Wah wings. And they're spicy hot wings. And let me tell you something, man. He smokes them for about 5 hours, and you ain't never tasted nothing like this in your life. And he made me some of those wings. And his lovely wife, Eastco, she's, I think, Japanese. He told her, give Lord G some of them wings. She started making me a plate of the wings, and she started putting a lot on there. And I was looking over there, I wasn't saying shit. And then he said, damn, don't give him that many. And then she took some off, and she gave me the plate. And then he told me, here, man, I'm going to give you this hard drive. And I'm like, huh? Do you know the world famous Wah Watson gave me one of his hard drives, which I'm still going through to this day. And it's got all those type of grooves that you cannot get today from these producers. Marvin Gaye and Curtis Mayfield sound. He gave that to me, brother. I have all those grooves from that man at my access, and we got a lot of good stuff finna come out. I'm just letting you know ahead of time. It's about to be some explosions, brother.
And I want to let you know as well, Lord, that we actually have all three of those songs you sent. They are locked and loaded and actually added into the station's rotation. And I will make sure I keep them playing every single hour of every single day, man. We most definitely will get some heavy rotation. Nothing but love from Prescott, Canada, all the way to Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, absolutely, brother. Enough respect. Big up to Outlaw Radio, man. You guys are doing an awesome job. I'm honored to be a part of the show, and I just really appreciate y'all taking some time to shed some light on what I'm doing and what I've done, man. I really appreciate y'all.
And I gotta ask quickly as well, man, if you can, drop them social media handles. That way our listeners can follow you and stay updated on everything Lord G, if they're not already doing so. But we are an old school hip-hop radio station, man, so I really hope they're already following you.
Oh, absolutely, man. For everybody that's trying to catch up with new material, old materials, want to check out the library of content and whatnot, all my handles are basically exactly the same. I'm Lord G360 on everything. When you go to YouTube, Lord G360. When you go to Instagram, Lord G360. When you go to Twitter, Lord G360. The only one that I'm not 360 on is Facebook, because they won't allow you to use numbers in your name. So on Facebook, I'm Lord G Fields, which is my last name in real life. Fields is my last name. So on Facebook, you just put in Lord G Fields. But on every other template, it's Lord G360. Lord G360. And for my people that study supreme mathematics and alphabetics, of course, you know that 360 is cipher complete. That's the degrees in a complete circle, 360. So for my cats that study, they know my studying name is Lord G360 Akbar Allah. You know what I'm saying? The God MC. So when you're looking for me, just remember, Lord G360, and you got your boy. I'm right there, baby.
And I gotta say, Lord, thank you so much, man, for just taking the time out of your busy evening and sliding into the 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM airwaves, man. I'm gonna be honest with you, I have been a fan of yours for many, many years since I was a youngster, man. So thank you for making amazing music that not only helped individuals like me get through their difficult times in their life, man, but also I'm pretty sure I'm saying this on behalf of everybody else that is a fan of yours, man. Thank you for your inspirational lyrics and just the music that helped inspire and spark the nation.
Oh, man, it's my pleasure, brother. I feel so blessed just to be a part of it, you know, and the fact that I got to meet so many amazing people, you know, that some of them are no longer here, like Tupac and Nate Dogg, and you know, some of the great brothers that I was able to meet that shared time with me, you know, and embraced me. It helped to mold me, and it helped to turn me into who I am to this day. You know, me and Mr. Tan, you know, we in the militia together, but we also have a group, just me and him, called the Dynamic Duo, and we're going to be releasing our album probably later this year. It's called The Gruesome Twosome. But for all the listeners out there, I want y'all to go to Amazon Prime, because I got my new movie that just came out, brother. It came out about 60 days ago. It's been 2 months. It's called 7th and Westlake, Nino's Revenge. It's got a lot of good stars in it. It's got Omar Gooden, which is Cuba Gooden Jr.'s brother. He's one of the stars. It's got Caffeine in it, which that brother's been in Menace to Society and Tales from the Hood and Players Club. He's been in so many different movies, and it's a really good movie, man. It's I'm not just saying that because it's my movie. I'm saying that because it's just a really good body of work. The main star, his name is Hollywood Rick Hard, and you can go on Amazon Prime. It's also on Tubi, and basically the movie is about the government creating an an experimental drug that makes black people want to kill each other. And it's a really deep movie, deep concept, creative body of work. Amazon Prime, 7th and Westlake, Nino's Revenge. Y'all got to check that out. My character's name is Chris.
And I gotta say as well, quickly, man, that sounds like me and my wife this evening are gonna be having a movie night, man. So I'm definitely gonna be checking that out on Amazon Prime.
I appreciate you, brother. Yes, sir.
Hey, man, most definitely, Lord G. Thank you so much again, man. And hopefully down the line we can make this happen again sometime soon. But for now, man, have yourself a wonderful night, man. Thank you so much again.
Absolutely, man. One love to y'all. Big up to Outlaw Radio, man. And y'all brothers keep doing what you're doing. Keep up the good work. And I'll touch bases with y'all. But next time around, man, we're going to keep it going.
Hey, man, most definitely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, brother. And to all the listeners, one love to all of y'all, man. Stay positive. None but peace and positivity. None but love from the legendary Lord G. You know what it is. Lord G 360, baby.